There are times where you look back and go, is it worth it? And it absolutely flipping is. I know it is, but let's just be human and go, there is a bit of a tax on being a youth worker sometimes. Hi, everybody. Oh, my office is so messy. It's been Easter week. It's kind of one of those, I've not had a lot of my regular projects week, but it's not really a holiday either. So I'm sort of working in patterns I'm not used to, and I'm having lies in that I shouldn't have. It's going to be horrible next week when I go back to a normal pattern. But yeah, I've been working on a van. I'm trying to make a van into a camper van. I've got tools everywhere. My room is just trashed. I wanted to think about something today about coming into youth work. And I wanted to ask the question, is there something like a lifestyle tax on being a youth worker? A lifestyle tax is just that price you pay for the thing that you live. And so, if you want to have lots of exotic holidays, overseas, the tax is long flights, potential delays, issues where you lose your wallet in the middle of nowhere. Things can go wrong when you step into a certain lifestyle. And I wonder if that's true for careers as well. And I wonder if there is something like a youth work tax. A few things from my life. I am almost always tired. Now, this is not saying this is the life of a youth worker or a minister, but it is something I struggle with. I have insomnia. I've had insomnia since about 15, though, so that's not necessarily youth work related. I'm 37 now. I've been diagnosed with all kinds of things, from GAD to ADHD to OCD. None of that's probably true. I do have some sort of trauma-based anxiety issues in my life, but I have lots of anxiety struggles that fuel my constant exhaustion. Excuse me, my body, I think, produces a bit more adrenaline. You can hear as well, I've got a bit of a sore throat today. So I've got my green tea in my awesome Cook Some mug. How amazing is this? My wife got me this for anniversary a few years ago. But anyway, there's a few things that youth work, I won't say inevitably, but often inherently has as part of its sort of unofficial job description, particularly UK-based youth ministry. And I've heard a lot of these stories. I've coached a lot of youth workers. I've recently written this book with a few other great authors, Leadership Trap, which talks about toxic environments in youth ministry. But I think there are some issues with youth ministry that are not ideal and should be resolved, but probably won't be resolved anytime soon. So I'm hesitating. One of the first times I spoke in a Bible college, when I gave a week of lectures in a Bible college on youth ministry, the feedback, because they always get the students to fill in feedback forms, academia is heavily reliant on student satisfaction. And Bible colleges are really struggling to get people to come to them in the first place, especially youth workers, and there's hardly any youth work training colleges in the UK now. But anyway, I went there and there was feedback, and the feedback was, it was great, content was really interesting, engaging, we learnt lots, but we found Tim incredibly negative, incredibly pessimistic. And I'm thinking to myself, why? What was I doing? I went back over my notes and realised a few times I'd said something like, I just think you're really brave that you're stepping into an industry that just might not exist. You might not even get a job. The branch is creaking. And I was really quite down on the idea of being a youth worker, which is terrible. These like 18, 19-year-old youth workers in the room going, I'm going to give my life to this. And I'm going, yeah, you're probably not going to get a job. So I've tried to temper that much more since then. Absolutely fair feedback. But there is inherent problems. First off, okay, let's start. It is most of the time it's low pay, and for most of my youth work career, I have struggled on low pay. Struggling far less today. The charity I work for has been very generous with raises and really helped me step up as I've upskilled and got more experience. But for most of my career and most of youth workers' careers, you're going to be on less than an entry-level teacher, and teachers are paid criminally too less for what they do. Low pay is an issue because low pay is not just about the monetary, I want to have a lavish lifestyle. It's about basics. It's often low pay, which means I can't responsibly have children. because I can't afford to raise a child on this kind of salary, or pay bills, or live in a certain place. There's all kinds of issues with low pay in terms of lifestyle changes and choices that often result in a youth worker saying, I can't continue to do this and raise a family or have a certain approach to life, and so I've got to quit and do something else, which is, I think, one of the reasons why a lot of youth workers quit early into their first contract. A second inherent problem is most churches don't really know what they want from their youth worker, and when they do, they don't really know how to get the best out of their youth worker. And this often means you've got lots of people line managing you sort of informally, without any clear structured line management and expectations and KPIs and things you need to thrive in your work. Instead, everyone just kind of thinks they're your boss. And so that inherent, you're kind of responsible to everyone and no one, really creates a black hole of authority in your life where you always feel like you're probably letting somebody down. And that persistent feeling of fear and shame can really bury you in this work. And I think the third inherent issue with youth work as it exists today is it's by nature, it's quite an invasive job. And what I mean by that is you're often working antisocial hours, long hours. You're often working on what would be everyone else's time off. You're often working spontaneously or in response to situations that are happening. And so week to week, you can have no consistent pattern. And consistent pattern is important for consistent health. And so the bouncing around everywhere can really take a toll on your relationships, on how you approach the world. It can really take a toll on your body's ability to rejuvenate and regenerate and just energize itself to live healthy. And I think linked with that, a fourth inherent difficulty is just making friends as an adult, because likely chances most of the people you hang out with are a lot younger than you, and they are not your mates. Sorry, you can be friends to young people, but not friends with. That's different. But also, a lot of people your age tend to be volunteers, team members, people in your church, your charity environment. And unless you are incredibly disciplined to structure your work-life balance enough that you can have hobbies where you're going to meet other adults, it can be quite hard to create and maintain adult friendships. So I've wondered if there is a bit of a youth work tax on doing this job. And I think it is probably fair to say we have to look this in the face and go, actually, there are problems with the nature of youth work as it exists today in the church. Of course, it has to be changed. That needs to be changed by youth worker habits. Often youth workers start quite young. I certainly did. I became a youth worker when I was... technically I was a part-time youth worker when I was 18. So I became a youth worker really straight out of university, full-time, when I was 21. There's a lot of life and job patterning that youth workers don't often learn because they're thrust into this highly independent, highly isolated, everyone thinks they're your boss, antisocial hours, poor structured and poor training for that lifestyle and structure environment. And I think we do have to start looking this in the face and going, there is a bit of a lifestyle tax on being a youth worker. It does need to change. We do need conversations about it. Youth workers have to change their approach and need better training to prepare them for this kind of world. But also, churches really need to get off their bums and think a lot more strategically about how can we look after youth workers for the long term. How can we pay them well? How can we support them well? How can we structure their life and environment that we can support their thriving as an emerging adult? How do we help youth workers be all they can be as a human, and so have them long term working with our young people? So I think there is a youth work tax, and again, as someone who's always tired, who's always anxious, and I get help for that. I've got I take medicines for my insomnia. I have therapy for my anxiety, and all this can be quite expensive as well as time consuming and quite vulnerable, because you're having these issues constantly on the table with either medical staff or counselling staff or psychologists, and things are on the table, and then you lose friendships. And I'll tell us one more thing. I know I'm waffling a bit today, but yesterday, my wife and I decided what we were going to do today was just go through some of our wedding memories box. And there's all these friends who came to our wedding who I've just lost touch with. I've not spoken to my best man in years. I do need to get on that. There's all sorts of people in my life that I really miss, that I just haven't had the energy. And for someone who's been in youth work for nearly 20 years, and I do have a pretty structured life now, yeah, long-term missing people takes its toll. And maybe something I should have added in before is youth work can be quite thankless and can be quite sad. I've done... I think people sometimes think youth work is just, shooting Nerf guns and quit with silly illustrations, and that's part of it. It is. It's great fun. But, I've done a lot of bereavement work. I've done a lot of mental health work. I've lost young people. Yeah, that's as much as I'll say about that now, but there are times where you look back and go, is it worth it? And it absolutely flipping is. I know it is, but let's just be human and go, there is a bit of a tax on being a youth worker sometimes. I could really do with sorting my throat out. But I think maybe I'm putting this video out there for some empathy. Let's say we're in this together kind of video. And if you're interested, do grab this copy of this book, The Leadership Trap. It does speak into this a little bit, some of the more extreme ends of the issues of being a youth worker. But for now, let's embrace... I think sometimes you have to embrace the fact there is a tax to things you want to do and things that are worthwhile. But also let's try and find ways in ourselves, in our systems to talk about it and hopefully, with God's help, fix it. Thanks, folks. Bye-bye.